What's up, everybody? So for today, I asked the internet, or more specifically a group on Facebook, for car questions from people who aren't car people. Just wanted some average questions from average people, and I'm going to try to go through that list right now, and we're going to try to answer as many of them as possible. First thing I've got, what are the top 5 luxurious cars in your opinion? This is a little outside of my scope, as I'm more of a performance car person really than I am a luxury person. But if we're talking luxury, I'm gonna throw out supercars because those are fast and they're expensive, but I don't consider them luxurious at all. So I would say, I don't even know if I can come up with 5, but the ones I like the most. Aston Martin is an awesome company. I like their cars. Their performance numbers are good. They're still kind of luxurious and they look good. Some of the higher end BMW stuff I like, and it tends to be among its group a little more reliable than some. And they also have a tendency to focus on performance and how well a car drives, which is more up my alley. Also, Jaguar if you're American, or Jaguar if you live pretty much anywhere else in the world. Also a pretty good company. The old Jags were not very reliable and had some pretty nasty reputation, but the new ones seem to be pretty good. And since Aston took so much control, I really like what they've done with styling and stuff. So I would have to say that ranks up there as well. Other than that, I mean, it's hard not to mention Bugatti just because they built the most expensive, fastest car in the world. But I mean, that's so unattainable for most people. I'm not even sure that counts. And other than that, I don't know that I even have a 5th one. I like those companies. That's about it. Moving on, how do I change a tire? I think I would need to probably do a video on that itself. For the most part though, if you have a flat or something and you're trying to put a spare on, it's really not all that complicated. You just have to jack that wheel up until it's off the ground. It has more than likely 4 or 5 lug nuts that you have to take off. Most cars come with a lug wrench in the trunk with the spare. That's what you take it off with. And then you put the new one back on and the lug nuts back on. The only thing that I will point out, because this is something I wouldn't have thought anyone would have issues with, but I've seen it a lot of times. With open lug nuts, the lug nut has 2 different ends. They're not the same on both sides. One side is flat and one side is like conical shaped. The conical shaped side is supposed to go towards the wheel, which fits into a shape that's on the wheel as well. And you would really be surprised how many of those I've seen come in upside down. I'm not sure why, but if you don't know that, now you know. Other than that, let's see. Is it better to get a new or a used car? That's a pretty complicated subject, but what I will say is this. Whether you buy a car new or used, you're buying the same car. So it's not like you're getting something different, but the basic trade-off here is with a new car, you're going to have a car payment, but you're going to have a warranty. With an older car, you're either going to have a smaller car payment or not a car payment if you can pay for it all at once, but you're not going to have a warranty. With me personally, in my experience, I prefer used cars. And that is mostly because cars depreciate in value so fast after they're sold the first time. I mean, even if you want something that's pretty new, you can buy a car that's not but 2 or 3 years old, at which point it doesn't even have much mileage on it, and it's already dropped a huge amount of value. And sometimes they'll even have a little bit of warranty left. I mean, that's one definite benefit. Also, if you buy something old enough that you can pay for it straight out and not have payments, you save all the interest that you would pay on another car. And yes, at that point, you're definitely going to have to repair it. So you're going to have to put some money into it. But depending on the car, if you educate yourself on what you're buying and you have it looked at, or look at it yourself correctly before you buy it so that you know what you're getting into, you can definitely come out with a lot less expense. As long as the car's in good shape and you're not going to have to put a huge amount of money into it, you're probably not going to put into it in repairs what you would have put into it new with a car payment. Obviously, me personally, I would prefer used. Let's see what else we have. This one just says car maintenance for non-mechanical. I'm not exactly sure what they're asking there. Maybe I need to do a maintenance video. I think we'll do that. The one thing I will mention on this video for that, if you have questions about your car's maintenance, if you go to a shop and someone says you need something and you're not sure if you do or not, You have an owner's manual in the car. If you don't have the owner's manual anymore, odds are you can find that information still online. That is your go-to for when a car needs something. Don't ask the guy at Jiffy Lube if it's due, because most of the time they don't know, and they're going by a set of standards that are not made by the manufacturer. They are going by a set of standards that their company has put together based on what they can get away with map standards. And it's not accurate for every car. It's sometimes, some of their stuff's not accurate for any cars. So if you want to know, check your owner's manual. That is the best place you're going to find the maintenance schedule and which things need to be done at what times. Let's see, another one. Who the hell made up blinker fluid? I have no idea. That's been around as long as I've been involved in cars. There have been fake things like blinker fluid and muffler bearings, and I honestly think it's mostly something that people who've been working on cars, or say like if you're in parts sales or something, somebody who's been around the car industry for a long time makes up to screw with the new people. Because I know even when I very first started years and years ago, the guys who are more experienced are forever trying to mess with the new guys, and we'll try to make them look stupid by asking them to find things that don't exist, or telling them to do things that aren't there. I know one time we asked a guy to price upper ball joints for a Ford Taurus, which has strut suspension and doesn't have upper ball joints. I know, God, I remember one time pranking a new guy about finding a radiator for like 60s Volkswagen Beetle, which is air cooled and doesn't have a radiator, or spark plugs for a diesel. It's just that. And then of course some of that gets transferred over and people remember it and whatever. But that's pretty much where that came from. Next, as someone who's never had a car, unless they live in a rural area, why are people so dependent on their cars? And then he mentions public transportation. This one is just going to be the two things. One, it's going to be highly dependent on where you live. I know in the US, at least, in the larger cities, you're not going to need necessarily your own car so much. Public transit is pretty decent there. I've known people from bigger cities, New York City, Bridgeport, places like that, and the public transit's better there, and if you need to get places, you don't have as far to go, so it's easier to get around. Where I live in the middle of North Carolina, public transit is terrible, and if you want to get to work and not have to leave 5 hours before you're supposed to be there, then you're going to need your own car. Not only that, but out here, the cities which aren't as big, most people, like I work in Winston-Salem, but I don't live in Winston-Salem. I live 30 minutes away from Winston-Salem. And there's only, I think, there's like a part bus that goes between where I live and Winston, and it leaves once in the morning and like once in the afternoon. So I'm trying to get to work and back and stuff using things like that is really impractical. Some people do if they have to, but in those cases, definitely owning your own car is pretty necessary. Plus, I mean, I live by foot 40 minutes probably away from a store. So, I mean, if I didn't have a car, I would be taking cabs and stuff everywhere. And they don't have a bus where I live. There's not really a public transit system worth anything here. So it's either have a car or stay home. The other case, though, because in places like Los Angeles, where it is a very large city and they do have good public transit, cars are still really common. And that's because I think in certain parts of the world, there's such a car culture. Japan, for example, cars are really important to them. They're status symbols. And in those cases, and I'm definitely qualify as one of these people as well, it's the love of the vehicles and the machinery that makes you want to own them, not necessarily just the fact that you have to have one to get around. So hopefully that answers that question. Next, what do you do when you take a car to get a tire fixed and it's flat again when you drive to your apartment? Do you complain or do you go to a different place? In that case, I would definitely call the place that did the flat repair back. There's two scenarios that could be going on. The flat repair that they did might not have taken. It might not have stayed. And if so, I'm sure that they would fix that for free. In the other case, it's possible that the tire just had more than one hole in it. That happens sometimes, and maybe you had one that was very obvious and one that wasn't, so they fixed the more obvious one. But either way, especially if that's the first problem that you've had with them, I would just call them back. More than likely, they would offer to take care of the situation for free. And, you know, at least give them a shot. I mean, if you continue to have problems, then yeah, you probably need to talk to someone else. Okay, the next one. I was told since my transmission fluid is so low and viscous and old that if you were to flush it and put new fluid in, your transmission would go into overdrive because it's so used running through the muck. Okay, I understand this one. This you hear at shops all the time. And what it's supposed to be, I don't know what they told you, but what it's supposed to be, when transmission fluid gets very old and heat cycles too many times, you get what a lot of people refer to as varnish, but you get basically a more solidified version of the fluid that sticks to the insides of the transmission everywhere. Now you'll have people say, oh, if you flush it, it's going to break. It'll stop working completely. The thing that you're mostly worried about there is if you hook it to, say, a flush machine that's going to pump all new fluid through it all at once. Transmission fluid is very high detergent, which means it cleans very well. But that also means that if you flush an old nasty transmission full of brand new transmission fluid all at once, you can actually dislodge chunks of the old material. And when that happens, it can wind up stopping up passageways in the valve body, which is the hydraulic part of the transmission that shifts gears and stuff. And if these little passageways are very small, and if you stop those up, whatever function that had is going to stop working. More than likely, you're going to wind up not being able to shift gears, or it may not move at all. So that's why they're saying to do that. The problem is that a lot of shops, when it comes to that point, will just tell you to do nothing. That'll be their solution. I don't know what to tell you, because what it comes down to is they don't want the liability. They're afraid to touch it, because they don't want to do anything to it, have it fail, have you get mad at them, and then expect them to put a transmission in the car. Now, as the owner of the car, though, you still have really old transmission fluid in your transmission, which is only going to continue to break down. So if you do what they say and don't do anything, then you're guaranteed to have a transmission failure at some point. So what I do on my cars, and what I suggest to people who have this same situation, is don't flush it with a power flush machine. Don't change all the fluid at once. If you have like a Honda or something which has a drain plug which will only drop about 3 quarts of fluid anyway, then do that to start your process. Or if you have, I don't know, a Ford or a Chevy or something which don't have drain plugs, then you can drop the transmission pan, change the gasket. You're only going to lose about 5 or 6 quarts out of a 12 quart system. So you still aren't completely replacing all the fluid. And then do that, run it for a while, do it again. It's like baby steps. You have to do it several times to get all the fluid changed, but that's a much more gentle way of getting new fluid in it instead of shocking it by putting it all in there at once. It's probably a little more expensive too, but I mean, once the maintenance is that far overdue, that's pretty much your best bet. You don't, and at that point still, if damage has already been done, it's been done. You're not going to be able to fix it. This is maintenance, but that's going to be about the only thing you can do to try to prolong that life. Although it's worked pretty well for me in the past. Okay, I think this is the last one. What happens to a car engine if you use the wrong gas in it? Issues here. Okay, as far as gas goes, there's not a lot of different options for gas. Well, in the United States, there's not a lot of options for gas. You pretty much, in most places, just have like 89, or like say, I think it's 85, 89, and 93. Forgive me for not knowing that well. I drive 2 cars that have to run premium. Really, the only difference between those, if you're in gasoline, is octane. Some cars do require higher octane fuel. Usually, these are forced induction cars, where you have higher cylinder pressures, and that high octane fuel is there to resist detonation, so that the car can have a decent amount of spark advance without spark knocking, which is that like nails in a tin can sound that you hear in some cars when you accelerate. And that damages engine internals, so you need it not to do that. The majority of passenger cars, though, will run just fine on 89 octane fuel. I mean, they're anything from regular up, they're designed to be able to handle. The car's going to run as much spark advance and be as aggressive as it can be until it detects spark knock, and then it's going to pull back a little bit. So they're designed to do that, and it really shouldn't hurt much. The only thing to worry about a little bit, and this I haven't had much of an issue with, but some of your cheaper gasolines, the regular from cheaper sources, the gas is still gas, but there are additives they put in the gas that help with like keeping them from causing carbon buildup and stuff. And the higher end fuels have more of that. So if you run a lot of really cheap gas, you're going to be a little more likely to have buildups, which, I mean, there are additives you can buy yourself. There's fuel injector cleaner and stuff that you can add to your gas every so often. So there's other things you can do there. But I mean, outside of that, the only other fuels you can even get at the tank would be like E85 or diesel, and God knows if you put either one of those in a regular gas car, you're not going to have to worry about long-term damage. It's not going to run to get away from the store. So that's about all I can say as far as that goes. I mean, obviously, like if you're running something like the GTP that's supercharged and it says specifically premium fuel only, then definitely run premium only. The difference there is if the computer is tuned aggressively enough and it can't pull enough spark knock or enough spark advance to keep it from knocking, then you can wind up with things like chipped pistons. And if that's the case, then you need an engine. There's nothing you can do about that. But once again, your owner's manual, as well as most cars, have a sticker inside the fuel door or on the gauges, there'll be something. If it doesn't say premium only, then you don't have to run premium. There's nothing wrong with running regular gas. The only thing is maybe stay away from cheap gas, and maybe watch out for, this is another thing, fuel from those old little mom and pop gas stations and stuff. Some of those things, those fuel tanks have been in the ground a really long time. And sometimes they're not, they're somewhat compromised. And if you were to get moisture or contaminants to be able to get into that tank, you may be pumping a little more than gasoline into your car. And water or anything else that might be in there that's not gas is not good and can damage it. That's where you get people talking about getting bad gas. That's generally where it comes from, is old tanks that have been in the ground for a long time and not been serviced or not been replaced. But anyway, hopefully that answered all of that. That's about all the time I've got for this one. So anyone has any other questions or anything, if you want me to do another Q&A like this at some point, feel free to drop them down in the comments. I will read them. I may make another video if I have enough. So as always, links to my discount codes for devotees and Get Off My Lawn Records will be down in the description. Check that out. Keep up with me on social media. I'll have all those links down there as well. And I will see you guys maybe in a couple days, hopefully, for my next upload. Thank you.